Hi, welcome to the Harmony Inspired Health Podcast. I'm Dr. Harmony, an Ayurvedic and women's health practitioner, doctor of Chinese medicine acupuncture, registered nurse, and the founder of the Ayurveda Alchemist Academy. This podcast is where Ayurveda meets modern science, where ancient wisdom empowers women's health, holistic healing, and soul-led success. Because true wellness is about more than just green smoothies and yoga poses. We're diving into Ayurveda, women's hormones, and holistic business growth. Plus, I bring on leading experts from all corners of the wellness world to keep you inspired, educated, and evolving into your higher self. If you love this episode, don't forget to subscribe and leave a 5-star review. It's like giving us a virtual high five of podcast love, and I truly appreciate you. All right, let's dive in. Hey guys, welcome back to the podcast. Today we're talking about something a little raw, maybe a little edgy, but extremely necessary, and that's spiritual bypassing. Now, I've wanted to do an episode on this for quite some time, but I actually wanted to riff this out with somebody else. However, I thought, I'm going to jump into this episode and do it solo because my husband reminded me of it this morning. He was saying to me that, so we have this dog, his name is Charlie. I love my little dogs, Charlie and Zula, but Charlie is so codependent on me. He follows me absolutely everywhere. You better believe he is sitting right next to me as I'm recording this, but he'll be following me in the shower, in the toilet, like absolutely everywhere. And so in the morning when he woke up this morning, he trotted down the stairs and Phil was the first person to engage with him and see him. And so he was like, "Hey, Charlie, good morning, mate. How are you going?" But he quickly tried to pass him to get out to me outside because he had to come and greet me first. And then when Phil was telling me this story, he said, "Charlie completely spiritually bypassed me this morning." And I was like, "What?" That's not spiritual bypassing, but it reminded me of how much I wanted to talk about this topic. I'm like, do you even know what spiritual bypassing is? And I guess this reminded me that a lot of people are doing it and they don't know what they're doing. Now, I'm not saying Charlie was doing it. I'm not saying my husband was doing it. I'm just saying like it reminded me of the conversation that I wanted to have. But I guess if we're really honest, some of the people who speak the most about light and love and oneness are also the ones who might trigger you and then completely ghost you when you're trying to bring that conversation up to resolve it, or completely gaslight you in that situation. Maybe they're also the ones that deny your pain, their pain, or just the collective pain. And they can also be the people that spiritually shame anyone for expressing very human emotions. So in this episode, I wanted to unpack what spiritual bypassing is, or at least what my take on it is, and how it shows up in the wellness space, including Ayurveda and yoga, why it is harmful, and how we can return to real embodied spirituality. Not just floating in the clouds of consciousness while avoiding our true sense of humanity. Now, we should start by asking, like, where did this term even come from? Like, it might be popular on TikTok right now, spiritual bypassing on different podcasts, you name it. But it was actually coined by John Wellwood. He says spiritual bypassing is the tendency to use spiritual ideas and practices to avoid facing unresolved emotional issues, physiological wounds, and developmental tasks. So I feel like it really speaks to those people who are very comfortable staying in their victim mentality, but do all the personal development, self-help things, as in they read the books, attend the workshops, listen to the podcast, but they don't actually implement any of the teachings. They might use throwaway statements like everything happens for a reason to be able to dismiss their grief or mask their anger or pain and really sort of do the work to release that. There are also a lot of people that, I guess, what am I trying to say? Like the love and the light, but it's so inauthentic. And also those people who avoid doing the hard work that requires change because changing requires change. And yet they think that their 5-minute daily meditation is going to solve everything. And I'm not saying that meditation isn't going to solve a lot of things, but it's not, or it may not solve everything. And just because you meditate daily and your friend does not mean that you're any more enlightened than they are if you haven't put the practice or the reasons that you meditate into your everyday living. And so I guess we could also say it's not the practice that's the problem. It's how we use it to avoid deeper work. So if we're masking the deeper work with 5-minute little meditations here and there, or listening to a manifestation podcast, etc. Now, how does this show up in quote unquote spiritual people? Because let's talk a little bit of truth here. In the wellness world, we have met all of those people who preach non-attachment but can't handle rejection, or they post about peace, but they explode when their ideas are challenged. Or maybe you've met those who have hosted beautiful cacao ceremonies, but they also manipulate their clients or label boundaries as, oh, that's so low vibe, or it's your ego speaking when somebody else is trying to implement a boundary with them. Ayurvedically speaking, this is imbalance sattva pretending to be enlightenment. Now, true sattva, which is peace and purity, acknowledges rajas and tamas. It does not deny them. And rajas and tamas are the energies of inertia and action. So we can't be all peace, love, and light without these other qualities. We can't experience day and night or activity and rest without these other qualities. In Ayurveda, spiritually bypassing can also manifest differently or be expressed differently through these people. And I shouldn't say these people, because even myself, I'm sure I'm very guilty of this as well. And this is why I love having these conversations, because we all learn and grow from it. And sometimes we can click, oh gosh, yeah, I do that. So, how can we grow from this? But going back to what I was saying, spiritual bypassing can be expressed through individuals differently depending on their constitution. So a Vata individual, it might manifest through escaping the body, living kind of in the ether and identifying only with intuition, like they're really up in their head and they feel that everything comes from this sort of superpower that they have. And so the symptoms that they might show is dissociation, erratic spiritual practices, and lack of grounding. So they're trying to do all the things, all the spiritual practices to say they're spiritual, but they really lack that grounding and the ability to take those practices and implement them in the way they're supposed to be implemented, which is within how we interact with the world around us as well. And then the way that this can manifest through a Pitta individual is becoming the perfect spiritual student. So they're constantly striving for purity, and they're very rigid in their practice. They're very rigid in their rituals, and they feel like they've got spiritual superiority over other people, and they can judge others. It can also express through the kapha dosha by clinging to ritual or dogma to avoid emotional upheaval. And these symptoms would look like spiritual stagnation, emotional suppression. Now, I just got thinking, and I'm going to call myself out here, when I was talking about judging somebody through the spiritual lens, I'm going to call myself out here that I did that, and I'm going to do it so I can give an example of how this other lady was also doing that at the same time. So basically, I went to this networking group a while ago, Women in Business Networking, which I love going and connecting with all of these women. And to be fair, I got there. These women, they're all really lovely. But sometimes in those environments, it can be a little bit funny. Like, I guess people are trying to put their best cards forward and quickly get over the line who they are but really how they want to perceive. So it doesn't always seem completely authentic. Anyway, the host asked one of the ladies, hey, I know you have a special here for everyone who's here today, and you want to share part of your business and what your special offer is. And so she got up and she said, oh my gosh, I would love to. I'd love to so much. And she started straight away and goes, I'm so awake. I've just been so awake for so many years. And I'm like going, what? An enlightened, awake person doesn't usually introduce themselves as an enlightened, awake person. Like, that is, to me, that is like this spiritual bypassing of trying to also get the whole crowd thinking that you're some sort of guru or that you've got this spiritual superiority over people. And so that will lead into whatever offer you have, everyone else in the crowd who is quote unquote less spiritual than you because they're not as awake as you, as you've announced, will need your guidance and product. And I was just sitting there going, wow, like, that is not how I perceive a spiritually awake person to act. They're usually a lot more humble and have a lot more humility about them. But in saying that, I caught myself in that judgment spiral of this whole situation. So who was also reflecting their spiritual superiority? I mean, we have to check ourselves constantly. And so by calling myself out, I got to explain that story. But I love to bring these conversations here so we can call ourselves out as well and we can grow and learn through these different conversations. I think it's really important. Now, in saying that, I guess when we can acknowledge the ways that we are contributing to this conversation, whether that's things that we have done or whatnot, we have to understand that you can't heal what you won't feel, right? So Ayurveda doesn't skip steps. It meets the mess with the medicine. And a lot of the spiritual bypassing happens when we don't allow us to feel what we need to feel. But it also continues to happen if we start getting addicted to that feeling. We become a victim to that feeling, and that becomes our story. No. The whole point of feeling it and understanding it is to move through it and to not be defined by what has happened to you. Define yourself on who you are and now and who you are becoming. Because you're becoming and you're stepping into your higher self. You're evolving into your higher self. So here are some other signs that you may be spiritually bypassing, or maybe someone around you is. And that would be, you can't express anger without guilt. Now, when I say express anger, I don't mean going nuts and throwing things across the room. I'm saying express how angry and frustrated you feel to be able to have that conversation, or to even have the conversation with yourself without feeling guilty about it. Maybe you label negative emotions as low vibration. And yes, vibrationally speaking, they have a lower frequency. But just because you've experienced a negative emotion, or someone you know has or is experiencing a negative emotion, doesn't label them as a low vibration person and you are spiritually superior to them. We are human and we go through a range of different emotions. Maybe on the flip side, you avoid conflict in the name of peace. So you're a people pleaser. Or you've swapped addictions for spiritual ones. And I see this a lot in the spiritual community. They have had sort of hard addictions in the past. And so now they're swapping them out for constant saging their place, or constant healing, yoga, fasting, all of these sort of spiritual practices they are now becoming addicted to, feeding their dopamine rush. Or another one that we see in Ayurveda is you use your Vedic astrology or your dosha, your constitution, to justify poor behavior. Now, we like to joke around and go, oh my gosh, my dosha made me do it. But no, your dosha will help you come back into balance and put you on the path of dharmic alignment, and understanding and realizing that is what it's all about. It's not justifying any poor behavior because your dosha was imbalanced. Another way that this could play out in your life is you only surround yourself with people who you believe are on your level. So you've judged them to be high vibrational, spiritual people that are as awake as you are. I have even witnessed people like going through breakups because they didn't feel that their partner was evolved as they are. However, everything else in their relationship was absolutely fine. And so they weren't accepting their partners for where they're at on their journey either. And this is also part of constantly expecting your partner or your kids to rise to your frequency of understanding in this sort of spiritual realm. And that really can be condescending, and you're putting them down, saying like, because you don't speak this language, this spiritual language, you aren't as spiritual as I am. And another way it shows up is you feel above others for meditating or being plant-based, or you shame others for taking medication or more conventional therapy as well. I see that a lot in the wellness world, where individuals, they are doing all these beautiful spiritual practices. They're taking supplements and herbs and doing a great lifestyle, but they still need some support of some therapeutic medication that isn't quote unquote natural. It might be a pharmaceutical. And then the judgment is quickly all over that person as being a fraud or not being as, wellness warrior as they should be. So I'm only bringing these up so we can start to see these reflections within us and hopefully stop judging either ourselves or people around us for not being as spiritual as we believe we should be or they should be. Because spiritual maturity isn't how much light you radiate, it's how much shadow you've met and integrated, and how you can refrain from judgment and practice more acceptance of yourself, of your emotions, of the people around you. So what would this embodied spirituality look like? It would be feeling your grief, feeling your jealousy, acknowledging that without shame, but then being able to release it and not judge. Saying, I don't know, and sitting in uncertainty if you don't know the answer yet. Doing the therapy or conventional treatment if that's what you need, and also the Tantra and the Ayurvedic practices. Having spiritual beliefs, but that also includes having boundaries, taking time to rest, to realign yourself, not always pushing and hustling. Ayurveda is a path of embodied spirituality. It doesn't bypass the body, the mind. It really begins there. And so we have to start with ourself. So a few reflections that you can have around this. I absolutely love ritual. You guys know I love to light my incense and do all my ritual before I sit down in my office, before I podcast. But the question is, who am I when that incense burns out? When I stop recording? Who am I truly? And I want you to ask yourself that as well. And where might you be performing spiritually to avoid reality or to give off a completely different, inauthentic story? Are you able to bring your healing down into your body, not just up in your head? So this here is really an invitation to descend before you ascend. This deep work that we do, it's constant. It's always going to be there. We're always doing the work, but it doesn't always have to be heavy. And we have to remember that part of spirituality part of healing, part of being human is lightness. It's having fun, it's being joyous, it's mucking around and joking around, because that also supports your nervous system. And the joy in that is sacred. Sometimes you need to have a little pause on the deep, heavy, constant work on yourself and just know that the lightness and the fun is part of the process of stepping into your higher self. But hey, if you need to have a good cry, then don't be ashamed of that either, because you know what? Crying on the kitchen floor is just as holy as chanting at a retreat. Crying releases cortisol through your tears, so it can actually feel really cathartic. And then once you have done, you can go for a beautiful walk in the fresh air and just be with nature. Well, thank you once again for listening to me. Hope something in this episode resonated with you. And if it did crack something open, you may just need to take a big deep breath in and a long breath out and just honor yourself for where you're at, for who you are, because you're perfectly on time. And if you're seeking a space where both spirituality and psychology are honored, along with our physical health, then come and join us in the Ayurveda Alchemist Academy. We integrate the real work, the grounded work, the feminine work. If you'd like to have a call with me about this, my call link will be in the show notes. If you haven't already got a copy of my book, Ayurveda and the Alchemy of Her, make sure you do. I do discuss a lot of concepts in the book like this, because it's all about helping you, helping women. This is my mission, to really see themselves for who they are, to step into their higher self and love this life that they can live, not thinking they have to be this perfect spiritual being, but they also get to be human as well, and all the fun that comes with that. Once again, thank you so much. Namaste.